Hello, thank you for tuning into my channel. This is Vlogmas in July 2022, day 10, and we're going to talk about some scrap storage. So if you are interested to see how I organize my scraps, please stay tuned. I am happy that I can share my organizational system with you as far as my scraps go. Before I go any further in the video, this fabric organization, scrap organization, as far as I'm concerned, you are in a judgment-free zone. I'm mainly saying that for myself. I'm doing something that sort of works for me right now. So I want to share with you how I'm currently organizing some scraps, and then I'll prepare a few on camera so that you can see exactly how I do that. I have a couple of different sewing areas in my house. Well, I have one main sewing area downstairs, but my former sewing area still has a lot of fabric in it. So upstairs I have my chest of drawers that has fat quarters or bigger. So it has fat quarters and yardage in it, in addition to some novelty fabrics and some other things. And then downstairs I've brought my scraps because I kind of use those as leader enders, and I've been trying to transition everything down here. I just haven't brought the chest down, and then I have some pre-cuts upstairs as well. So today we're just going to talk about how I have my scraps organized, and then we'll get to prepare a few things. Right now I have 4 major categories of scraps, and the last 2 that I'm doing, I just came about those within the last few months. So maybe since January I've started looking at this new system as far as organizing in some different measurements. Okay, so I think the way that I've been storing fabrics the longest is in my shoe boxes. I currently have shoe boxes that I use for scrap storage, like this one, but I also use shoe boxes for project storage. And if you follow my channel, you've seen me pull some of my projects out of shoe boxes that I've been working on. To me, this is a great, economical, earth-friendly, whatever, storage system, and so it works for me. And so I've recently started labeling the boxes so I know what's in it. I don't have to open every single box every time. But it's just something that I like to use. And this is storage for my crumbs. And so for me, crumbs are anything smaller than 2.5 inches square. And in here I keep, these are like bits of pieces from another project that were already stitched together. I have super skinny strings, but they have to be at least a 1/2 inch wide, or at least like 3/4 of an inch wide. And then I keep smaller bits, like little rectangles and stuff that I use to stitch into crumb blocks. And I have several of these crumb storage. I have one downstairs, but I have several upstairs that I can kind of pull from when I want to do some crumb stitching. The second oldest, I guess, but this could be the oldest, I really don't know, is my string storage. I have, my strings are long, skinny bits of fabric, and these are usually longer than 5 inches long, but then really skinny, so less than 2.5 inch strips. I do have a few 2.5 inch strips in here, but that's usually because I've already cut some squares out of them and I just want to keep a few left over. And I have my strings sub-sorted into lights and darks. So this is a bag with just lighter strings, and then I have 2 bags behind me of darker strings. I'll pull one up if I can get it up here. So this is my dark strings. It's one bag of them. I have another huge bag that's also full of dark strings. And this is what I use to make my string blocks or my pellon strips. I can pull from these when it's time to do leader enders or make some string blocks. Okay, my next storage system, the two newest ones I have, and you can tell that they're new because they're like in fancy plastic containers, are some squares. And I only cut these into two sizes. I have 5-inch squares here, and these are sorted into light on one side and then color on another side. And I've been using these to make my practice blocks for quilting, and I'm making huge 9 patches out of them. Let me see. Here's one. Right here, this is just a practice block that I made for quilting, and I made a 9 patch out of these 5-inch squares. The other storage that I have is for 2.5-inch squares, and it's here. And I actually have these sorted by color. Well, ideally they are, but I have so many neutral strips that they kind of fall over, or neutral squares that they fall over. So I haven't quite made it here. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm using these currently to make my postage stamp blocks. I have one finished block here, and I just pulled it off the floor, so it's pretty wrinkled. But one finished block here, and then several partial blocks behind me. I don't know if you can see them in the frame, but here's an almost done blue one. I have a purple one started and a green one started as well. So that's what I'm using my 2.5-inch squares for. And right now, these are the only things that I am cutting. So if I have a long string, it automatically goes into my string blocks. If I have teeny tiny bits, they go into a crumb storage, and then I cut into 5-inch squares and 2.5-inch squares. Now, where am I getting my scraps from to cut? I'm going to prepare just a few of these on camera so that you can see sort of how I do this. I need to turn my iron on, but I haven't done it yet. But I think I am going to just use this surface. I do have a huge, my huge cutting board is over there, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. So I'm going to grab a couple of rulers, and then we'll talk about where my scraps are right now, and then we'll do a few on camera. Before we get into the actual cutting, I want to talk about where the scraps that I'm pulling from. They are in this box, and I think what happened at first was that I got this box and it had fabric in it, and then I pulled some things out and then as I get more fabric that's like either leftover that's not quite big enough for anything, or that that, you know, if I just pick up something and it's just a small piece, or if somebody gives me a small piece, I will throw it in this box. And ideally, in real life, it would be awesome if I did like 5 of these a day, and just over time, lowered my scraps or organized my scraps. But I typically don't do that. I'm gonna try to do 5 today and just see if I can make it a regular practice. But usually what happens is I can do it for a couple of days and then I forget, or I just get busy doing other stuff. So there are there's a variety of different things in this box. Some of it is old blocks. And typically if it's an old block, I won't cut it, so it's just sitting there. Right now it's still in here because I don't know what to do with these old blocks yet, so I'm still thinking about it. Some more blocks that I have in here are like these butterfly blocks. I think there are 6 of these. Let's see, what else? This is actually part of a grab bag that I got when I was visiting my sister over the holidays. And I pulled a lot of it out, but I just, when I got home, I just threw the rest of it back in this box. So, and then a lot of it is just random bits and pieces that are left over from other projects. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose 5 of these just for the sake of perhaps getting on track. And then we can go through these and cut them together so that you can see how I organize, or maybe just get some tips and tricks for organizing your scraps or cutting scraps or whatever. As I said before, this is a judgment-free zone. You can decide what works best for you as far as organization, as far as measurements that you want to cut. pieces that are important to you. That's completely up to you. I'm just going to show you what's working for me right now, and it could change, you know, within the week. So let me just go ahead and pull 5 pieces out of here. So I'm going to take this one, and then 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to churn a little bit, see what I can pull out. Then 4 here, little bitty piece. And then there's a yellow that I want to pull out too, out of this bag. So here we go. I'm going to get these pressed, and then I will meet you at the other table so we can do some cutting. I decided to move over to my larger table. I'm actually going to stand to do my cutting, but I moved to the larger table so hopefully you can get a better idea of what I'm doing here as I cut the fabrics. I left out one other way that I sort my my scraps or my fabrics. I do have a box of 2.5-inch strips here, and I have these sorted into lights and colors. I typically save this for with the fabric strips. So most of these I haven't cut myself. Most of these came in a different way. Like these bottom ones, they came in a pack of 50 strips. And most of these, I think most of these I cut, but I got them out of a full width of fabric. So this is just one more way that I sort them, and I wouldn't have picked them out except one of the pieces that I pulled is almost a full width of fabric. So so that's why I'm showing that to you. What I like to do to cut my pieces, or I like to use my shape cut ruler because it has the inch marks and the 1/2-inch marks, and so it's really simple to cut, and the goal with this is to cut the scraps quickly and easily. So so I just like to have something that can do that fast for me. Now, as I said before, the measurements that I'm looking for are basically 2.5 inches and 5 inches. And for this first strip, since it's almost a full width of fabric, it looks like it's the width of fabric, but I must have cut the selvage off. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I folded it in 4ths. I'm just going to line up here at the 0 line, and I'm going to cut this strip at 2.5 inches. So I'm hoping this is going to work. And I don't stress about it being perfect, because usually for this process, close enough is good enough. So I'm just going to give it a cut here at the 0 line, and then a cut here at 2.5 inches. And if all went well, I just have little slivers to take off. Oh, I wonder if I need a new blade. Let me grab a ruler and just cut the rest of this off. I don't know what happened. I might need a new blade, but I shouldn't. The blade that I have is fairly new on here, so. But I'm just gonna take this and cut it because it doesn't have to be perfect for me. Okay. So I'm just gonna hold it down. Get as good a cut as I can. All right, so there we go. And then these slivers just go with little teeny tiny scraps and won't get used. So this part now will go into my 2.5-inch strips since it is with the fabric. Okay, so now let's look at a different piece here. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull 2 of these pieces because I know that I can get a 5-inch square. The first measurement that I always look for is the 5-inch square, then the 2.5-inch mark. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my ruler. I have it here, and I have it lined up at, I have a little bit left over on the left side of the 0. And then here is the 5-inch line, so you can see that I'm gonna have a decent 5-inch square, and this is not quite 7.5, so I won't be able to get any 2.5-inch squares out of this, and that's okay. So I'm going to cut at 0. I'm cutting at 5 inches. Okay. So what I have here is 2 bits that are going to go into my strings, and then this is teeny tiny scrap. All right, and then I turned it, and I'm gonna get my 5-inch square, and then I'm just gonna see what's left, okay? So here we go. So here are 2 5-inch squares. And then here I have leftover of at least 7.5. So I'm gonna cut this too. All right. And then let's see. This I could make a crumb. I may cut that down just a little bit. This is probably also gonna be a crumb because my pellon strips that I normally do, it's right at 5 inches. So I'm not gonna keep this as a scrap. I'm gonna put both of these in the crumbs, but I'm trying to think if I wanna cut some of this off. Let's see. So like I could cut like just a regular rectangle out of this. So I'll just do it this way. And like that. Not really, it doesn't have to be even. I just want some straight sides. Okay. And so now these are pretty fair sized crumbs. This I'm not going to, well actually I'm gonna put it in the crumbs, it doesn't matter. All right, so now I have 2 5-inch squares. So when I grab my storage, okay. So when I grab my storage, my 5-inch squares, since it's a black one and a yellow one, they go on the color side here. Then I'm going to cut my 2.5-inch squares here, and they're already lined up. So I'm just making one more cut to get those 2-inch squares. I'm gonna slide this with my crumbs right quick. Okay. And I'm just gonna line up the ends and then make a cut at the 2.5-inch line. And so now I have 4 5-inch squares. Okay. So I'm going to put the 2 black squares in my black pile. And yellow in the yellow pile. All right. And then these strings, since they're both color, they go into the color strings. All right. And now I'm already 3/5 of the way done. So just 2 more. And I think I'm going to start with this long skinny strip first because it's going to give me, I think it's going to give me some good 2.5-inch squares. And if I was a person who kept selvages, and I do keep some selvages, this selvage is pretty plain, so I'm not going to hold on to it. But this is a great way to get some selvages if that's what you're looking for. I'm going to just... And I can get a really nice 2.5-inch strip out of this, but it's not with the fabric, so I'm not going to worry about using it in my 2.5-inch strip, but I'm going to get some squares out of it. Okay, so 2.5 inches. All right, and then the selvage goes away, and the other side goes away, and then I'm just going to turn it, and I can get my squares. So I turned it. I'm going to put the 0 line as close to the fold as it'll go. Okay. And then I'm going to cut every 2.5 inches. So 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10. All right. And then I have a little bit left that can go into my crumbs. So when it comes to these, I'm going to put these in my orange stack in my 2.5-inch squares. So there that is. And then these bits go into my crumbs. And I like to do it as I go so that I'm not stuck with a whole bunch of stuff to do at the end. All right, so last bit. Let's see what we got. And this does have a selvage on the end. I'm not going to stress about that for the first cut because I know I can get a 2.5-inch square out of here or no, I'm getting 2.5 inch strips. So I'm gonna get my 2.5 inch cut. All right, and this bit, this side, it's gonna be a nice string because it's at least 5 inches long. So I'm gonna put that to the side and put it with my strings. Now when I get my squares, I'm gonna cut the selvage off so that I have just what I need for my squares. And I'm not super picky about what type of fabric it is for the scraps. So there is some flannel. There may be some pieces that are not 100% cotton, and I'm not really stressing about that because I know these are gonna be part of scrap quilts. So I'm not really stressing about that, okay? So these are trash, and then these are 2.5 inch squares, and I'm gonna put those on the blue stack, which is right there. Okay, and that was not a, that was a pretty easy process. So, you know, now that I've taken the time to go through just those 5 bits of fabric on camera, I realize what a small amount of time it takes, and I'm encouraged to work on this just a little bit at a time every day. Even if I go at 5 little pieces of fabric each day, I know I can help build my stash and get sorted through some of that stuff. I hope that this video has been encouraging for you, that you got some insight about how I organize my scraps and maybe some tips about what you can do for your own scraps, even if it's just a little storage idea or a ruler idea, anything like that. I hope that this video has helped you. If it has, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions about what you've seen in this video, leave them down below as well. Don't forget to thumbs up this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!